not Democrats are able to retake the Senate in 2026. So we'll start out with the likely rating states. We'll go from likely to tilt, starting out with likely. We'll begin with the likely red. There are going to be, the map looks a bit different than it usually does. We're going to start with Mississippi, going to put that into the likely red column. The state generally votes red. It very consistently has, but I think that it will be by a slightly narrower margin because this year is shaping up to be really good for Democrats, that things will narrow up slightly. And then we have the state of South Carolina. Lindsey Graham, I think, is most likely going to be able to win re-election. That definitely seems like the most likely situation at the moment. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but that's going to be the state of South Carolina. And then we have Kansas. In prior predictions, I had Kansas and Mississippi in the safe column, but I think I will now move them both into the likely column. Nothing too crazy here. Kansas is definitely a red state. Kansas City is kind of the only more Democratic-friendly part of the state. They do have one Democrat in the House representing that area. And so that's going to be the state of Kansas. And then we're going to go to the state of Montana. This state has actually elected Democratic senators in the somewhat recent past. Two years ago, Jon Tester ended up losing his re-election bid. He was a Democrat in the Senate. He got replaced by a Republican. Currently, the other Senate seat is up for election, and the incumbent Republican that holds this seat has retired, so it means neither party has incumbency advantage, which will most likely end up benefiting Democrats slightly. I still think they'll lose this race, but that's going to be the call there in Montana. And I think that will be the end of the likely red states. We'll now move on to the likely blue. We're going to go with the state of Minnesota in the first place. This state has voted blue for quite a while, and I don't think anything will change come this November. That's going to be the call there in Minnesota. And then I think that might be the end of the we have the state of Oregon, which for some reason I usually have it might be in the safe column, but regardless, that's going to be a seat for the Democrats, one more in the likely blue column. And then we have these other states that are going to be a little more competitive. They are going to be in the lean or tilt range. We'll start with the lean Republican states. We have the state of Nebraska, which I'm going to give that designation. There actually isn't a Democrat running in this seat. Dan Osborne, an independent, is running for the Senate seat in the state of Nebraska. He actually ran for the other Senate seat 2 years ago. However, he fell short and didn't end up winning. And while he didn't win 2 years ago, he did significantly outperform Harris in the state, and he was able to do quite well. So I think an environment quite a bit more favorable to Democrats, even though he isn't necessarily a Democrat. He is virtually the de facto Democratic candidate. I think that he can put in a good fight, and that the state will go from what is normally a safe red state all the way to lean red. Could be an upset race. We'll see what happens, but that's going to be the call there in Nebraska. And then I think that will be the end of the lean red states. Oh, I meant to do one more in the likely red. I forgot the state of Florida. I'm going to put that into the likely red column. State of Florida, there we go. So that brings Democrats to 44 seats, to Republicans 47. Democrats are fighting an uphill battle on whether or not they'll be able to control the Senate. Currently, the markets have it at a 60-40 split, with Republicans having the edge, of course, in the Senate. We'll see if that edge solidifies into a Senate majority or if Democrats can pull through. But that is going to be the call there in Florida. Now we're going to move on to the lean blue states. Actually, I think we'll start with lean red. So for that, we have the state of Iowa, which I'm going to move from the tilt red, lean red. Realistically, I think it will be in one of those two. I think it will most certainly go to the Republican, but that's going to be the call there in Iowa. And then we're going to head over to the lean blue states now. We have three of them that I'm fairly confident in calling. We have New Hampshire, which is going to be a hold for the Democratic Party, holding a seat there. And then we have Georgia, which is also a hold for the Democratic Party. Jon Ossoff is a fairly popular senator, as popular as you can be in a swing state, but he has strong fundraising game, and he's been doing quite well in the polls. And I think the prediction markets agree with me on the call in Georgia that state's Senate seat will remain blue. And then the first flip of the prediction comes with the state of North Carolina, which I'm going to call for the Democrats. This is going to be the first flip of the prediction. The incumbent Republican senator is retiring, so neither party has incumbency advantage, similar to Montana. But in this case, I think Democrats are Senate. Then I think the rest of these are going to be in the tilt blue or tilt red column. We'll start out with we'll alternate between tilt red and tilt blue. For the first tilt red state, we have the state of Texas. Going to put that into the tilt red column. This state is going to be an interesting one to watch. John Cornyn, the incumbent Republican senator, lost his primary. Is hoping to win this Senate seat. Trump-backed nominee who's quite a bit more populist and less moderate than John Cornyn is, but he is most likely going to beat James Talarico. Talarico is, I think he's a pretty strong pick for the Democrats. I think that the Democrats definitely, when it comes to candidate quality, James Talarico is definitely a better candidate than Ken Paxton. I think, honestly, if John Cornyn was the nominee, the seat would probably be in the lean to likely column. He is not as well, he's better liked than Ted Cruz, the other senator, and he in the past has done quite well in his election bids, John Cornyn, but now that he lost the primary, things will narrow up with a great Democratic candidate and a not amazing Republican candidate with quite a few scandals. And speaking of scandals, we have another seat in the state of Maine that is going to be going blue. This one is going to be the opposite prediction of the state of Texas. But Maine, this is Susan Collins' seat. I think she will most likely end up losing her election bid. But she's been in the Senate for quite a while, so, could be a surprising upset victory that Susan Collins ends up holding on to her seat. And she is a Republican in a state that generally votes blue. Generally on the presidential level, I have the state in the lean blue column. They divide up their congressional votes, congressional districts by electoral college vote. So generally the Portland, Maine area is quite a bit more Democratic, while the Republican Maine area, the more rural parts, are generally quite a bit more favored to the Republicans. Trump won that district. And then we're going to go to the state of Michigan, where I'm going to put that into the tilt blue column as well. This state, I think, will be close. I've said this before, but if Democrats are going to lose the seat and Republicans are going to gain one, it would probably come with the state of Michigan. That's going to be the call there in Michigan. And then really these two final states will determine control of the Senate. I've gone back and forth. I have had both of these in both columns, depending on how I call it. But I'm going to go with Alaska in tilt blue. I think really think Dan Sullivan has a strong likelihood of winning. It's a really tough one to call, both in Ohio and Alaska, but they will be split calls. And with that, for the first time in a little while, Republicans are able to hold on to the Senate. Advance the tie-breaking will end up being exactly what I said, the tiebreaker in the U.S. Senate on split votes, but that is going to result in a Senate. Don't forget